If you are watching this video, then it means that you are preparing for your low-level design interviews, and most probably you may have your interview scheduled this week or even next week. So yeah, and like most other candidates, you will be also having the same question in your mind, that are you going to explain such large systems uh, in like a very limited 45 1 hour interview, 45 or 60 minutes interview. You see, the main problem with low level design interviews is the questions that you are given, either a parking lot, or design a food ordering system like Zomato or Swiggy, or design a ticket booking system like Book My Show. You know, you basically typically Zomato or a Uber Eats take months or even years to build using hundreds of engineers. So if you are wondering that how I'm going to basically put this everything in a 1 hour interview, then you are not alone. And the goal or the trick here to clear LLD interviews is to be specific. And the main basically aim of creating this video is I will wanted to teach you how to be specific. So how are you going to pick your do the requirement gathering part, and which functionalities you are going to pick for discussion and which you are going to leave out of it, because obviously you cannot discuss everything in such a limited time period. Then how are you going to break everything into classes? If there are any design patterns involved, how will you recognize them and use them? And finally, how are you going to test your system? So that's what we are going to learn about, and let's get started. There are going to be two kinds of low level design interviews. One can be your 75 to 90 minutes of machine coding round, where you will be given the exact requirements and you have to write code. So this kind of round is taken by companies such as Flipkart, Miso, PhonePe, and many other companies. So typically this will be your first round. It is used to screen the candidates, and after the coding interval, there is going to be a 15-minute discussion with the interviewer, where we will defend your code. They will ask you questions about it. The second type of round, which is the most common, is the face-to-face 45 to 60 minutes round. This round is taken by almost all the companies: Amazon, Microsoft, you name it, basically Walmart, Flipkart, everyone. Google doesn't take low-level design interviews, I guess. They may have started taking, but I don't think they take LLD interviews. So this is what these are the two kinds of formats that you can get in an LLD interview. Again, the first step will be requirements gathering part. Let's go through a few examples. Let's suppose you are asked to design a parking lot. So your core requirements can be park your vehicle, unpark your vehicle. Other requirements can be search vehicle in case someone has lost their ticket, show number of free spots. The second, let's suppose you are asked a food ordering system like Zomato, Swiggy. So what you do in a food ordering system, you browse a list of restaurants based on different parameters like rating, popularity, price. You order food from items from restaurants, you rate your orders. Now there are two things I want you to notice. First, there can be, I have only taken the important functionalities. I'm not concentrating on the other functionalities. There is going to be other functionalities in this system. There can be payments, there is going to be user management, there is going to be authentication, notifications are going to be there, analytics is going to be there. If it's a food delivery system, then your basically delivery tracking is going to be there, discounts is going to be there. So yeah, lots of other features, but like I already said in the beginning, these are large systems. They can have tens of components, and they can have typically hundreds or even thousands of classes, and you cannot compress or squeeze everything in a 60 minutes, 45 to 60 minutes interview. So you have to pick the important features and design your classes for that, and design your solution for that only. That's the key here. So the first thing which I want you to take along or learn here is pick only the important features. If uh, if you want to see some examples of important features for each question, you can try CodeZym.com. There, go through each of the question. You will see for each question which can be the important features. The second thing which I want you to take note is, you can see I have written exact method signatures of the methods or functionalities which I want to support. You see park vehicle, park method, it takes a vehicle type, it takes the vehicle number or the license plate, and a ticket ID. Basically ticket ID the interviewer can ask you to generate also. For ordering food, it takes an order ID order is taken from a restaurant and a specific food item is ordered. So the second thing is to write your API structure with parameters or write your method signature correctly. Uh, it does basically benefits you with two things. First, it makes your thought process clear, and second, it makes it clear to the interviewer what you are going to design for. So if they want to make any changes, let's suppose interviewer wants to implement you multiple parking strategies, so they can see that you are going for a generic or a custom parking strategy of your own, and they can tell you, okay, I want multiple parking strategies. What happens is generally you don't write the signature, and then after 30 minutes or 40 minutes into the interview asks you to, okay, I wanted this. So there is a slight mismatch between the requirements what you are designing for and what your interviewer is thinking. I do not want that to happen with you. That can be a scary scenario that can ruin your interview. So yeah, always write method signatures correctly or API signatures with your parameter names. Let's get ahead. After you are done with the requirements and you have picked which functionalities you are going to discuss with your interviewer, the next step is you will be required to break your overall solution in different classes. So what you do in this step is you start bottom up. So you start with the classes which do not depend on any other classes. Typically, these will be your entity or data classes. For example, a food ordering system like Zomato, you will have an entity class restaurant, which will typically keep the data about a restaurant. So it will keep a restaurant ID, it will keep a list of food items, it can keep the restaurant's name and address. Again, there are going to be orders in the system, so there can be an entity class order. It will keep an order ID. The food is going to be ordered from a particular restaurant, so it will also keep the restaurant ID. Food is also going to be basically an item ID, so food item ID will be there. Also, the user may give a rating to the food item 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So a int variable rating can be there. Again, you also need to keep the cumulative rating or average rating of all the restaurants. So you need a rating class there, which will have the sum of all the ratings and typically count of all the ratings, using which you can simply find out the average rating of the restaurant. After you are done with all the entity classes, next will typically be your manager classes or the view classes. For example, you have the class restaurant, so it makes sense to have a restaurant manager. So restaurant manager will basically manage the CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete on all the restaurants. So it can keep all the restaurant objects in the system inside a map, a restaurant ID versus restaurant map objects. It can also have methods to basically add new restaurants, remove existing restaurants, show a list of top restaurants, something like that. Similarly, you have class order. So there is going to be a class orders manager. It will keep list of all the orders. So it can keep them in a map, order ID versus order object map. It can have the method to update rating of an order or fetch details about an order, things like that. Then you will have the either the view or search functionalities. If you remember, in the case of a parking lot, there was the search functionality of search by ticket or search by vehicle number in case someone has lost their ticket. In case of a food ordering system, what you do is you want to see the list of top restaurants by their rating. So you can have a separate class, most rated restaurant, for that. You also want to search for a particular food item and see top restaurants which are selling that food item. So you can have another class for that. So these will be your classes. What you will do is you will write down the different parameters or the different instance variables and the important methods that each class is going to support. You will not write code for those methods. You are just needed to write down the instance variables and the method signatures. That's it. If you want to see specifically for question by question, then there are tons of questions on CodeZym. There are videos on this channel also. You can just go through them. Now that we are discussing about view classes, let's see how can we use design patterns to implement these functionalities. One way to get ahead of other candidates in a low-level design interview is figure out if the question that you are being asked is it involves the use of some design patterns. Now for this you need to know different scenarios and the different design patterns which can be used to solve those scenarios. For example, In case you are asked to design a parking lot and the interviewer says you, okay, I want you to implement multiple parking strategies, then you will use a strategy design pattern to solve that question. In case it's a food order delivery system and there are two view classes, for example, the first one shows list of top restaurants based on their overall average rating. Another view class, it shows list of top restaurants based on their overall average rating, but for a particular food item. So you want to get the top restaurants which sell a particular food items. So okay, so these are your view classes and they depend on the average rating of the restaurants. And what does the average rating of the restaurant depends on? It depends on your basically rating for each individual order. So whenever a customer rates an order 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, that rating gets added to the overall average rating of the restaurant which sold that food item. And so if it can affect multiple view classes. Now, so every time an order is rated, we need to send that rating update to all the view classes which depend on that rating so that they can basically update their internal data structure. So this is a good use case for using observer design pattern. Let's suppose you are being asked to design a game of chess. So you can use factory design pattern to create the different chess pieces. 8 pieces of basically your pawn, uh, 4 pieces of your uh, knight, two of black and two of white, and other chess pieces. So for this, for figuring out the design patterns, you need to know the different scenarios. You can try codezym.com/roadmap. So basically this is a preparation plan. So what it has is, it has got the most common design patterns on a daily basis, and there are practice questions for each design patterns and the different interview question scenarios which can solve using those design patterns. So if you just go through that, you will know about the common design patterns and the basically various interview scenarios or various interview questions that can be solved using those design patterns. Whenever you are using a design pattern, one thing you need to keep in mind, you will need to defend your design choices. Interviewer is going to ask you, okay, why did you use this design pattern? So do not use a design pattern unless you have a visual benefit. Because whenever you use a design pattern, you have to add additional interface, additional classes. That all code could have been written in the same class. There is no need of extra classes. So interviewer is obviously going to ask you, why did you add this extra complexity? So it must be some specific benefit that you can tell the interviewer. For example, in the case of your parking lot, you used strategy design pattern to implement parking strategy. So you can tell the interviewer that, okay, this makes adding new strategy easier. If I have used strategy pattern, so if I add a new parking strategy, it is not going to affect the existing strategies. If we had put all the code in the same class, then we have to put the newer code in the same class. So it would have increased the number of lines of code, thereby increasing the complexity, decreasing the readability. And also now at a time, rather than reading 3 simple classes, the person had to read one complete, a larger class, which slightly more difficult to understand. So it has leads to more maintainable and extensible code. In the case of basically your using observer design pattern in your food ordering system, what you can do is you can defend your design choice by saying, okay, now we have loose coupling between the module or the class orders manager where your data is getting changed, which is responsible for CRUD operations on the data, create, read, update, delete, and the view classes, basically the classes which depend on that data, which show a list of top restaurants. So let's suppose tomorrow if you want to add a new notification class or add a new analytics class which needs to take those rating updates, then we do not need to affect the existing classes, and we do not need to affect the orders manager as well. We can add a new observer at runtime. So it has first brought about loose coupling, and that has made it easy to add new observers. So again, our code has become extensible and easy to maintain. So like this, there need to be a visual benefit, uh, a tangible benefit which you can tell your interviewer that these are the benefits that my design pattern had brought for solving this question. The last thing which can be discussed, and it's sort of the optional thing, many interviewers discuss it, many don't. So it is the multi-threading. So every language has got some locks and synchronization features, and interviewer will ask you to basically write your code in such a way that it will be tested in a multi-threaded environment. So you have to make use of these locks and thread safe data structure so that your critical data, basically a particular data, it should not be get edited by two or more threads at the same time. So in case you are using Java, you should know about the different thread safe data structures. Like rather than using an int, you should be able to use an atomic integer. Rather than using a simple hash map or table, you should use a concurrent hash map. Rather than using a list, you should use a concurrent linked queue. So other languages like C++ or Python may have different data structures and different locks, and also you should know about them and try to use them. So this was all that I wanted to share with you guys. Uh, Basically, you should try to write code and practice these questions and run tests for them. You can do that on CodeZym. So it has got questions and you can write code for those questions and basically practice those questions and run tests against them on the CodeZym editor itself. So practicing gives you the benefit that it gives you a much better understanding rather than watching multiple videos. Thanks for watching this video. I wish you the best of luck for your interview preparation. Bye.